Breaking tonight, Mark Carney's Middle Power Coalition just found its most unexpected recruit. South Africa didn't resist, they volunteered. Competition is intensifying across the Global South tonight. Canada pitched a Middle Power alliance at Davos, but instead of polite applause and empty promises, Pretoria started quoting Carney's speech word for word. Everyone believed Canada's Middle Power strategy was European theater. Elegant rhetoric for a Western audience. Wall Street assumed Africa would remain China's backyard. Analysts predicted South Africa would shrug off Ottawa's overtures and stay locked into BRICS. They were all wrong. Davos, January 2026. Standing before a packed audience of global leaders, Mark Carney delivered a line that would echo across 3 continents. Middle powers must act together, because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. Translation? Carney just told every mid-sized nation on the planet that the old order is collapsing, and there's a seat open for anyone bold enough to take it. And South Africa heard him loud and clear. Dear viewers, what's unfolding between Ottawa and Pretoria right now isn't a headline-grabbing megadeal. It's not a flashy signing ceremony with flags and handshakes. It's something far more interesting. It's the slow, grinding construction of something that could reshape how Canada projects power for the next 50 years. And most people aren't paying attention. That's exactly why you should be. Let me walk you through what's actually happening, what's falling short, and why the biggest opportunity Canada has right now might be sitting on a continent most Western nations still refuse to take seriously. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. Canada's trade relationship with Africa is, to put it bluntly, embarrassing for a G7 nation. A Senate committee reported in December that Africa accounted for barely 1% of Canada's total merchandise trade in 2024. 1%. Canada exported just $583 million in goods to South Africa last year. That's roughly the same number as 2006. Nearly 2 decades of flatline trade with one of the most resource-rich nations on Earth. And here's where it gets more revealing. Canada's trade volume with the entire African continent falls, and I'm quoting the Senate report here, well below that of other G7 countries. France is there, Germany is there, even Italy has a more aggressive Africa strategy than Canada. So when critics say Ottawa has neglected this continent, they're not exaggerating. The numbers prove it. But here's the thing, and this is where the story gets fascinating. That neglect, it's creating an opening that didn't exist 5 years ago. Because while Canada was looking the other way, something changed in South Africa. The electricity shortages that crippled the economy, they've ended. The rand has strengthened to 3-year highs. Economic growth is ticking upward. And most importantly, the African Continental Free Trade Area is reducing barriers across the continent, turning South Africa into exactly what it's been marketing itself as for years, the gateway to a market of 1.4 billion people. Now layer Donald Trump's trade war on top of that. Trump slapped South Africa with a 30% tariff, 30%. And just like that, Pretoria went from cautiously interested in Canadian trade to actively seeking it. Wandile Silobo, an agricultural economist who sits on President Ramaphosa's own Economic Advisory Council, told the Globe and Mail that South Africa sees Canada as a key potential trading partner in the Americas. He said they're pushing for progress this year. That's not diplomatic politeness. That's a country signaling it wants to do business. Now, I want to pause here because some of the most insightful analysis on this topic has come from you, our viewers. And one comment in particular captured something that I think is absolutely essential to this conversation. One of our community members wrote this: I do think that it would be beneficial for us to expand our trade with Africa generally, as I feel like the continent is often overlooked as a market and has the biggest opportunity for growth in the future. Read that again. Overlooked. Biggest opportunity for growth. That viewer isn't just making a casual observation. They're identifying what might be the single biggest blind spot in Canadian foreign policy. Think about it. Every major economy is fighting over the same saturated markets: Europe, East Asia, the United States. Meanwhile, Africa's population is projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. Its middle class is expanding faster than any other continent. Its mineral wealth, from platinum to lithium to rare earth elements, is essential to the green energy transition that Canada claims to be leading. And yet Ottawa is dedicating a fraction of 1% of its trade attention to the entire continent. Another viewer put the South Africa opportunity in beautifully practical terms. They wrote, "South Africa is far from a perfect country, but we could both benefit from increasing our trade. They have a lot of minerals, agricultural products, wine, and other goods. I, for one, love my Jim Green leather boots from South Africa, and without tariffs and import duties, they would be some of the most affordable quality boots on the market. We could send them manufactured goods, other processed goods. Our mining sector could build up its presence there. It could be beneficial working with South Africa." And that's exactly the kind of real, ground-level trade thinking that turns grand strategy into actual prosperity. Not just diplomatic communiques and investment treaties, but boots on feet, wine on tables, mining equipment on the ground, and manufactured goods flowing in both directions. That's what trade diversification actually looks like when it moves past the PowerPoint slides. So where does Carney's strategy actually stand? Let's be honest about what's been delivered so far. After meeting President Ramaphosa at the G20 in November, Carney announced 3 initiatives. First, talks on a foreign investment promotion and protection agreement. That sounds significant until you learn that South Africa has been reluctant to sign these treaties for over a decade. Analysts say it could take years to negotiate. Second, a South African trade mission to Canada. But when the details emerged, it turned out to be a farm industry delegation visiting an agricultural machinery trade show in Saskatchewan. Greg Knott, who chairs the Southern Africa-Canada Chamber of Commerce, said the mission was too narrow. If you don't go where capital and decision-makers are, you miss half the opportunity. He's right. A trade show in Saskatoon is not a substitute for high-level meetings in Ottawa and Toronto. Third, Carney promised a Cape Town office for FinDev Canada. But Ottawa's own Africa strategy had said this office would open by the end of 2025. It still hasn't opened. A spokesperson said there's no confirmed date, and when it does open, it won't even focus exclusively on South Africa. It'll handle the entire African continent from a single office. David Black, a Dalhousie University professor who studies Canada-Africa relations, didn't mince words. He said he sees little evidence of serious, sustained, high-level engagement with African partners. So the critics have a point. The gap between Carney's rhetoric and the actual trade machinery is real. But here's where I'm going to push back on the pessimism. Because I think the critics are making a mistake that analysts have been making about Carney since day one. They're measuring speed when they should be measuring direction. Yes, the Africa file is moving slowly. Carney himself admitted it at a press conference in Johannesburg. He said he decided to focus first on regions where potential returns are higher. That's because we have a responsibility to have that highest return, he said. And strategically, that's not negligence. That's triage. Look at what Carney has accomplished in the regions he prioritized first. Trade frameworks with the EU, deepening partnerships across Asia-Pacific, strategic engagement with India, Japan, South Korea. The middle power architecture is being built in layers, and Africa is a layer that's coming. The question isn't whether Canada will engage. The question is whether it will engage fast enough to capture the opportunity before someone else does. Because make no mistake, China is already there. European companies dominate South Africa's solar energy sector. The window isn't going to stay open forever, and this is precisely why the middle power framework matters so much. South Africa isn't just another trade partner to check off a list. It's a test case for whether Carney's entire philosophy can work. If middle powers truly are going to reshape global trade by building coalitions based on shared values, rules-based commerce, and mutual sovereignty, then South Africa is the obvious proving ground. Both nations are resource-rich. Both are democracies navigating the chaos of Trump's tariff regime. Both need to diversify away from American dependence. As Knott put it perfectly, the opportunity now is to move from shared values and potential to execution, speed, and scale. Dear viewers, here's the bottom line. Is Canada's Africa strategy underwhelming right now? Yes, the numbers don't lie, and the gap between promises and delivery is visible. But is the direction right? Absolutely. Carney's Middle Power Coalition isn't just a European club. It can't be, not if it wants to represent a genuine alternative to the old power structures. Africa, with its explosive growth trajectory and untapped market potential, isn't optional for this vision. It's essential. The foundations are being laid. The political goodwill exists. South African officials are quoting Carney in their own parliament. Business communities on both sides are starting exploratory conversations. The FIPA negotiations, however slow, are moving forward. What's needed now is urgency. A proper high-level trade mission, dedicated diplomatic resources, a FinDev office that actually opens, and a recognition that the continent most of the world overlooks is precisely the continent where the next century's growth will be concentrated. Carney's middle power plan is working. Europe is in. Asia-Pacific is building. But Africa is where this strategy either becomes truly global or remains a well-spoken half measure. And the clock is ticking. If you've been following this channel, you know we've tracked every stage of Canada's transformation from reliance to resilience. This is the next chapter, and it's one that could define whether Canada becomes a true global middle power or just talks like one. That's the story tonight. That's the story nobody else is telling you. I'll see you in the next one.